DHG doing my review for Gardeners of the Galaxy. I love the little Gardeners joke that they have in the game here. It's quite good. Made me chuckle a few times. But this game's average. I was originally going to give it a good score, but due to some things that popped up later in the game, a couple bugs and some political issues that I do not think should be in games. So I'm going to start off with the good things here. The great graphical presentation. I originally started playing through this on PC back when it was on the Xbox Games Pass. And it looked good on that, although the performance was fairly, I wouldn't say unstable, but it was a bit janky. On PlayStation 5 though, it played pretty good. It maintained fairly stable frame rates most of the time. With ray tracing mode on though, the frame rates were inconsistent. I ended up just going with a high quality mode just because I can work with 30 frames per second as long as I get the extra resolution. 60 frames per second in all games is not a must-have for me, but the option is there if you want it, so that's always a plus. The banter between characters is some of the best ever. That was the first thing I noticed when I started playing this game. I really enjoyed the interactions between Peter, Rocket, Drax was probably my favorite. Gamora, I would have to say, was the least interesting. However, this is another plus for the game. I'll get to this later. Gamora has a superb voice actor. I don't know who does her voice acting. I didn't look it up. But whoever does that is good. Whoever does Rocket's really good as well. But the banter they have is very good. It's humorous, and that'll bring me to my next point. There's lots of humor and charm to the game. Like I said, the interaction between the characters, and especially, let me show you a bit of this little sucker here. There you go, the llama. I never thought having such a funky animal would make such a difference in the game, but I love the llama in this game. They do a lot of cool shit with that llama. Love that thing. So the game's got lots of humor and charm. That's definitely a huge plus, because a lot of games that are coming out these days kind of shy away from humor, or they go with humor that's not humor at all, like the Saints Row reboot. Just horrible. The game is generally fun, if chaotic, however, combat-wise. The combat is, let's just say it can be obtuse at times. By the way the control system's set up, you would need like some extra digits to play the game with. You know, like having 6 fingers in this game would help. But, you know, overall it works. It was a fairly well-designed control system. It could have been streamlined a bit more though. The combat was generally fun, although it is a little chaotic. Gamora and Rocket had great voice actors. I already mentioned that. Yeah, the voice acting for both those two was superb. Mantis was pretty decent too. Good cast of characters, especially the llama. It didn't matter if you were talking about the enemies. Raker was, you know, I'll get into one of the cons for his character, but a lot of the characters in this game were very well made. Mantis, very interesting. Of course, you got the Guardians of the Galaxy crew. They're good. The llama, I love the llama. And then even some characters that you may or may not run into. Like the first time I got to Nowhere when playing on the PC, I completely missed the interaction between Peter and Drax, where they're just staring at the edge of the universe, you know, wondering what's there and just being philosophical. It was a pretty interesting moment. And then there's an encounter when you go into the bar. You can run into a guy called Lipless, which was interesting to say the least. But the game was filled with all sorts of interesting characters. A lot of the characters go to play to the game's humor, especially like when interacting with the world mind and going through all the different things on the computer. Okay, here's one of the more humorous interactions in the game, where you're supposed to be picking all these different options to try to get the world mind to talk to you, and of course your teammates are putting their requests in rather forcefully. It's an interesting aspect to the game. Not a lot of games have that. Those kind of interactions with AI teammates that just really feel like they're part of the game. They did a really good job with that. Overall, they had an engaging narrative pertaining to the Elysian false promises that the cult puts forth to their victims. I thought that was a good narrative. It goes and gets into like everyone's inner psyche. It was kind of like I would say Silent Hill 2 like, except the opposite of it, where Silent Hill 2 took everyone's greatest fears and used that against them. This game was using what people wanted the most and try to brought that out to make them live in like a state of bliss, but woefully ignorant to what's going on around them, and ultimately into self-destructing. Okay, getting into some of the stuff that's neither here nor there. Not a real big list on this one. I just have one item. Minigames are present in this game, but they are well done. I generally don't like minigames. I understand that if you're going to do a cutscene that you want people to interact with, you're going to have to use them, but they shouldn't be extremely invasive or terribly difficult. Like Clive Barker's Jericho had some horrible minigames, and so did Resident Evil 6. I understand not a lot of people played Clive Barker's Jericho, although that got quite a bit of views on YouTube. But Resident Evil 6, a lot of people would have played. Just way too intensive for minigames. That's how you don't want to do it. This game did it well. They're just simple. They kind of bring you into the cutscene a little bit more instead of just you sitting there watching it. It brings interactivity to it. Now we're getting into the bad things. The anti-religion narrative was insulting. Yeah, I didn't like that at all. What's presented in this game is that they almost kind of like want to push a whole secular worldview where religion is viewed as this thing that is just bad altogether. There's nothing good about it. It's never done any good for the world. And if you're into a religion, like whether they never insult Islam, these woke types that, yeah, I'm saying woke because of some things that were mentioned in the game later on. The woke types will never attack Islam. Will never do it, but they'll attack Judaism, they'll attack Christianity. I've never heard them attack Buddhism or Hinduism either. But they try to make it sound like anyone that adheres to any type of religion is some sort of a religious nut job, like a zealot. And just like anything in life, you have good instances of things and you have bad instances of things. Any line of text can be interpreted in multiple ways. You can have people that would bring the absolute best from that, which a lot of people have done. And then you get people that will dig into the nitty-gritty and find some of the most obscure items to twist it and make a very perverted message that would encourage radicalism. That's largely done by intelligence agencies, and that's where we get a lot of the more radical sects of the religions that we see today, such as Christian Zionism in general, and some of the more radical elements to the Islam religion, like the radicalized Al-Qaeda, the ISIS, all that stuff. That all came from manipulation. And a lot of those things were largely created as well by intelligence agencies or people like, what was his name? Okay, I remember his name, John Darby. Yeah, a lot of the whole rapture cult thing with the Christian Zionism all stems off of him. Like I said, you can have people that use religion in a good way, good messages like Jesus, or you can have the people like the John Darbys that create rapture cults. Or, let's just say, the Scientology crowd, which is really Satanist, L. Ron Hubbard. Okay, moving on to the next bad thing. The lock-on mechanic is finicky, to say the least. Free aim is totally useless. A lot of the time I tried to use free aim just because the lock-on wasn't letting me lock on to the specific enemy I wanted to. And sometimes when you're in the heat of the combat, you don't really remember that the right stick can let you choose this target or that target. Let me see if I could show you an example of that real quick here. Okay, this is late in the game. Okay, there's some more enemies popping up there. Late in the game, you're going to encounter situations like this where there's not a lot on the screen right now, but during the same level, you'll get put into a lot of situations where you have maybe 12 different enemies on the screen, And when you're trying to moving from the lock-on of one to another, sometimes in the heat of battle, you'll forget that you can move that with the right thumbstick. But that combined with the, I would say, rather cumbersome controls, where you're using your left finger to hold down on the trigger so you can lock on, but you also want to use the left bumper. Sometimes it helps you use two fingers. The whole thing just could have been a little bit better well done. They just felt cumbersome to me. Unwanted parroting of Marxist propaganda. Yeah, let me see if I could find a specific instance of this. This really pissed me off.
I know, and I lost so many answers. Like, seize the means of production, or it's not just a rash, or
Seize the means of production. But this was right after the whole BLM Marxist summer of hate, which a lot of people were just acting as useful idiots for this Marxist organization that somehow formed in the wake of the Trayvon Martin killing, which happened, I think, in 2013. And then somehow, 7 years later, this small little group from, these three fat black lesbians started this social movement that became worldwide in less than 7 years. Now, when I say worldwide, I mean worldwide. When that summer erupted, this Marxist organization had chapters everywhere. All through, I was surprised to hear that they were in Europe. I heard they were in Canada. And then I started looking it up. They were in Japan, South Korea, Africa. I mean, BLM in Japan? Africa? Are you kidding me? And no one's, like, how does a so-called grassroots movement go from being this small little thing that was protesting about Trayvon Martin's death to being this worldwide global juggernaut that has some of the most sophisticated controls and communications that I've seen? That doesn't happen organically. Come on, people, use your fucking heads. That had Soros money and a lot of these, the corporations too. If the corporations were donating to this group, like throwing money out of their asses at them, corporations never do anything for real justice, ever. They hate it. They're diametrically opposed to it. But a lot of useful idiots fell for it. And I was calling this stuff out on Twitter in 2020 on my old account, which got banned. And they ended up changing their website by the end of the year because me and a lot of other people were calling out exactly what they said how it was Marxist. And right there, you got developers, for some reason, this isn't even really a political game. The only slightly political thing you could see in it is the secularism versus religion. But Marxist propaganda right there, seize the means of production. At the same time, you had, it was some sort of a rapper, I don't know his name, but he was doing a set somewhere and he just saw fit to say, seize the means of production because, bad capitalism. Well, first of all, we don't even have capitalism in the United States. It's a very tightly controlled system designed by the oligarchs to make them as much money as possible. If it were capitalism, there would be competition. There isn't. That's why you see things like Windows with Bill Gates and Microsoft and hasn't had a competitor in 30 years. Why is that? Because it's not a capitalist system. But as soon as I heard that, I immediately had to drop the entire game, give it a point off. There was a couple other items, but that largely was when I was starting to think, taking it from good to average. But, I mean, hey, it's your game. You want to put it in there? Fine. I'm going to fucking call you out for it. Cumbersome controls. Oh, already did that one. Bugs. Yeah, the bugs, this was another thing that made me drop it a point. There's a lot of instances in this game, and this goes in with the next item I'm going to list as a negative, which is it's very restrictive. Like, they limit your movement greatly in this game, and when you combine the bugs with the very restrictive movement, there's times when you're walking through and they're trying to guide you through the narrative by limiting player control. Like, Peter Quill cannot walk past a certain point. If you try, it'll automatically turn him around. Sometimes a bug will happen at that point where the narrative has already moved on, which means you should be able to move, but you can't. The game just locks you in that spot unless you reload the checkpoint, which some of the checkpoints in this game were not very good. But unless you reload the checkpoint, you're just going to be stuck there. I think there was a couple bugs I encountered in the platforming aspects of the game where I should have caught onto a ledge, but I just fell to my death, stuff like that. Yeah, most of the bugs had to do with the game stopping character movement and then not unlocking it once the narrative or whatever was supposed to be set in the game to unlock it once it's been said. They just kept you locked in place. That happened numerous times. I mean, not once, not twice, numerous times. The next item, as I said, it is very restrictive. Yeah. This is a very linear game. You do get a little bit of open world exploration once you get to nowhere, except that's very limited. Like I said, the first time I played through part of this game, I think I got about halfway through. But I did get to nowhere, and I didn't get to see the whole conversation, as I already said, with Drax, and then the whole lipless thing. Which a little bit of open world gameplay was nice. But mostly, this game just, it takes you from one set point to the other, to the other, to the other. It's very linear, and it is really, really restrictive on character movement. So I didn't really like that. I would rather just, if you want to make a linear map, then make the linear map, but don't completely restrict my movement everywhere I want to go and make me stop dead in my tracks just because characters are saying certain voice lines. And my last con. The beginning of this game starts off way too slow. Oh, I forgot about these jet scenes. I'll have to mention something about that. But yeah, the beginning of this game starts off way too slow. Back when I first started playing this on PC, I thought the whole quarantine zone, I didn't like the look of it. It just, the whole thing looked like bubblegum. But it didn't look very engaging or interesting to me. It was a bit too kind of like, I can't really say science fiction-y because space is science fiction, at the moment at least. But it kind of looked like high fantasy mixed with science fiction, which is very unappealing to me. And the storyline doesn't really let you know where it's going to go. The characters are just going back and forth. You're still trying to make something of the game. You don't know what to make of it yet. I didn't think they did a very good job with the opening. It does pick up, I would have to say, by the time you get done playing through your first hour, you know what the game's going to be delivering to you. And at that point, you can either stay in or you can drop out because you just don't find it appealing. I was about ready to shut this game off about 20 minutes in because I thought it looked stupid. It didn't look like it appealed to me at all when, if they would have put some of the stronger points in the game right out from the get-go, I would have known that this game was for me. Or at least I would have had an average playthrough with it. If they didn't have to put all the Marxist bullshit and anti-religious messaging in it. Ship sequences, there's, I think, 3 of them. There's one where you do a driving sequence where it's pretty much like escape, run for your life type thing where you're dodging a lot of different stuff. That was pretty cool. There's another one where you get pursued by a galactic bounty hunter. I can't remember the guy's name, but they all make fun of him. It's a pretty interesting moment. I don't think I have that one recorded. But that was kind of like a Ratchet and Clank style ship combat moment. And then you have what you saw right there. I thought the ship elements were well done. They could have thrown a lot more of them in the game instead of just having this cookie cutter combat as the basis for pretty much most of what you do in the game. That's my rating. Yep, average. It may be for you, it may not. I thought it was definitely worth a playthrough, but the more I played through it, and then the bugs and the Marxist bullshit and the whole anti-religious messaging kind of got to me. It could have gotten a better score, and I would have enjoyed a lot more had those elements not been there, but I mean, hey, maybe you like that kind of thing, maybe you don't. It's all up to you. I'm giving it an average score.